What I want to show you today is a compressed natural gas system. Now, if you guys are aware of it, compressed natural gas is the same gas that you use in your house. Now, we have both compressed natural gas, but there's also something called liquefied natural gas, and that's a liquid. Now, to get it to be a liquid, we have to freeze it to over 240 degrees below zero. And at that point in time, it becomes a liquid, and we can store a larger quantity. That's all we're doing with compressed natural gas is storing a quantity. So we've got a cylinder here, and the cylinder actually holds about 3,600 psi of natural gas. It's not very big, but it'll take the vehicle quite a ways. What we have is we've got a system here that came off a truck that was used back in the 1970s. It's still operational. What we do is we bring in the natural gas at 3,600 psi. We have a unit here called a pressure transducer, which is what makes your gas gauge work, so you can tell how much fuel you have. It goes from there to a regulator. This is the first stage regulator. We take the pressure at 3,600 psi and drop it down to about 100 to 125 psi, because the engine doesn't use the fuel at 3,600 psi. Okay, you ever seen one of those before? Where would you see one? Oxygen acetylene tank. That's where it comes from. You ever do any welding or see an oxygen acetylene tank used? That's what that one's from. So it goes from there on into what we call a shutoff solenoid. The shutoff solenoid turns off the gas if the engine stalls. We go from there into a second stage regulator. And the second stage regulator, boy, that looks very familiar to me. Do you know where that comes from? Would you ever look at the meter on the outside of your house for your gas gauge? That's where it came from. So they've got this meter from the outside, and then it goes from there, comes out at about 3 psi, real low pressure, into what we call a mixer. So that's how we introduce it into the engine. In the real world today, they have kits or pieces that are made up specifically for cars. And what we're going to do is look at those same pieces. Like if we start at the tank, that's the tank that's used today. We then have a valve that is used to turn off the gas at the tank. We start into the high pressure regulator, which drops it from 3,600 to what? 120. Very good. We then have a shutoff solenoid, very similar to the one we have on the other unit. Shutoff solenoid turns off the fuel. There's a one-way check valve designed to keep the fuel from flowing back and flowing back into the engine when we shut it off. We have high pressure tubing. It's 100 psi, about like shop air, so you can't use just regular old pipe. And a quarter turn valve so we can turn off the fuel to the engine so we can service the unit. We have a low pressure regulator, which is the same as this unit right here. And in this particular case, what I brought for you is an injector. This is a heavy duty injector that injects the natural gas into the engine. Now, we can have either fumigated with the ring, just like on the burner on your stove, or we can do a little bit higher pressure and bring it in with this particular injector. This is a natural gas truck that was built by Ford, original equipment, built on the assembly line as a natural gas vehicle. If you take a look at this and actually compare it to a Ford gasoline-powered vehicle, you won't find a lot of differences between the two vehicles. If you look on the other side over here, you can see that they have high-pressure stainless steel lines bringing it in the natural gas. And those high-pressure lines have two pressure transducers in the line. So that's the only difference you can tell between the vehicles. The injectors themselves are different type of injectors, but they work exactly the same way. And in fact, it uses the same Ford OEM computer. The tanks are mounted in the back of the vehicle. There were 2 tanks in here originally, and our class installed 2 more to extend the range of the vehicle. That's the major issue with natural gas vehicles, is their available range compared to gasoline. That's why gasoline was so popular. It's because it gave you extra range. These tanks are 3,600 psi tanks, and they have to be inspected every 3 years. They have to be very careful that they're not damaged. So we have them very carefully covered back here so they don't get hurt.